So which is more dangerous, a gun or a swimming pool? What do teachers and sumo wrestlers have in common? Did that get your attention? Because that's exactly what Freakonomics does. It grabs you and it keeps you engaged throughout the whole book. So although some of these questions seem a little unconventional, these are the questions that Freakonomics deals with. This book was written by Stephen D. Levitt and Stephen J. Dubner, who aren't the typical economists. So this book takes a look at some very bizarre aspects of everyday life. Freakonomics takes a new approach in dealing with economics to establish that the modern world is even more intriguing than we think. So I'm going to dive right into the chapter summaries briefly without spoiling too much of the meat from the book. So the first chapter is called What Do School Teachers and Sumo Wrestlers Have in Common? So this deals with the entirety of cheating from children, school teachers, and of course sumo wrestlers. So the question, this chapter questions rational and ethical decisions that people make on a day-to-day basis. So one aspect of cheating they touch on is how cheating to lose is actually worse than cheating to win. So a little twist than what most people think. And another example is from 1987 when 7 million children vanished on April 15th. So this wasn't a big kidnapping or an epidemic of any sort. This was parents that were, or adults that were putting on their tax forms that they had a child or multiple children when in fact they didn't exist. They were doing this to get more money back on their tax returns. So on April 15th in 1987, a new law was implemented that you had to provide your social insurance number for your children. And because there were all these phantom children out there, 7 million of them just vanished. So the second chapter is how the Ku Klux Klan is like a group of real estate agents. So this deals with terms that real estate agents use to try and sell houses, and the terms correlated to a higher or lower valued house. So this chapter is interesting because it shows how in advertising and marketing that words can mean one thing to an individual and something completely different to another individual. So this chapter was most interesting to me because it relates to some discussions that we've talked about in the Arbus 300 lectures about branding and marketing. So in this case, real estate agents are trying to market this house as being spacious and fantastic, when in fact it's in a very low price range and it's not at all that fantastic. So for time's sake, I'm just going to skip ahead to chapter 4. This chapter, again, a somewhat unconventional question, being where did all the criminals go? So this chapter deals with the relationship between crimes and the abortion laws being regulated or legalized. So the legalization of abortion had a big impact on the deterrence of crime in the 1990s. And I'll walk you through the steps that they went through to determine this. So legalized abortion led to less unwantedness, and unwantedness led to high crimes. So legalized abortion therefore led to less crime. They go through a series of studies in which some states legalized abortion and some states didn't. So between 1994 and 1997, murder rates fell 23% more in the states that legalized abortion than the ones that didn't. And there's other factors they take into consideration, but it's interesting and relevant to understand that any change, big or small, can have effects on things we might think as unimaginable. This made me see the world as more intriguing than I did before. After reading this chapter, I began thinking, what other things might be related that I think have no relation whatsoever. So I'm only able to touch on 3 of the 6 chapters from this book in this presentation, but the book really is a great read. It's called Freakonomics. It really opens up the mind to possibilities, relationships, and occurrences that people never thought plausible or possible. Even if some of the statements in this book seem rather unreasonable, it gets the mind just kind of working and wondering about a lot of things in economics and life in general. This book was helpful for me in my own personal interest because it deals with gaining an appreciation for economics outside of economics as well as a whole, society as a whole. So I don't know much about the stock market, but one thing I do strive to learn more about every day is people and their ways of thinking and acting. So learning about these things will help me in the short term and long term.